Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Troubadour Talks. Today, I have again on the show Jesse McCarthy, who is the founder of MontessoriEducation.com. And he also owns a Montessori school down in South Florida with his wife. And we're going to be talking about happiness as a parent and having kids and some practical advice on kids, because I saw this article that I thought was really interesting. And I'm 38, I have no kids, but I have a lot of friends who have kids, and I talk to them, and I someone who's considering kids. This is a very interesting topic to me about having a happy life with kids, because the narrative I hear of both married life and child life is that those are incompatible. And in fact, therapists are now finding that this is true. So there was a HuffPost article called "This is What Harms Married People's Happiness the Most," therapists say. And the number one thing, having kids. Research has shown that people's marital happiness declines after having kids, especially during the first year of a child's life, so on and so forth. So I thought I would bring on Jesse. We would talk a little bit about this. I have a poem about having this kind of idea. Maybe we'll read that a little bit later. And I got some questions from some of the Troubadour listeners who are parents and had some questions. So, okay, Jesse, I'm going to bring you on. Thanks for being here, first
Hello.
off.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Kurt.
And the first just broad question, and we'll break this down as we go, but is it necessary to lose happiness and decline in happiness, and however you define that, in the first
Yeah.
year, even, or at all,
I feel
as a
like our
parent?
whole, human species would have gone away by now if that was the case. Because if people started telling each other, hey, this is horrendous, this is horrible, then people stop having kids and then we just would not, continue living. Uh, but I think the seriousness of
Mhm.
it is, I wonder, when you have kids is kind of like you're supposed to, you remember that old thing, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. This is what you do.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes marriage before kids, how much thought was put into it? Did you jump into it? What's going on? So there's already in most marriages and challenges. Like you're living with another human being who has a different personality, different things going on. Everything is not fireworks and love every single moment of the day. So when trouble arises, sometimes you guys might have conflicting feelings about it, conflicting views, and then you throw in another human being that you're taking care of and you're responsible for. So I think battles might ensue, particularly if you haven't really thought through, how do I want to raise a kid beforehand? What does it mean to have a kid? Uh, so there's a lot of things that come up that are going to bring about frustration, conflict. And if you're not prepared to deal with that, yeah, I can see it causing a lot of trouble and a lot of stress and a lot of unfun. So
What
I don't think it's a necessity, but I think it could come with a lot of marriages. Yeah, and having kids. Yeah.
Well, we'll break this down, but the way you brought this idea of we wouldn't be here maybe if we didn't figure this out. And it seems like one way we figured it out as a species from prehistory to today is this idea of obligation and duty, and like it's your responsibility to your parents who did this for you, to the tribe, to
Hmm.
other people. Like this seems to be one way. I hear this all the way down to today, where it's like your job is to do this. Like Christianity and
I see
Catholicism
what you're
really
saying.
really says that. And that's kind of, and now they'll often compensate it, especially in a modern world, with it's the greatest joy of all, and it's to do this. And so it's like a, now what that joy is, I think there's a lot of packaging of good things that we associate with. You feel a kind of pride for your children, and you get to see something very special, and you bring into this world this new special thing. But when I think the therapists are talking about in this HuffPost article is personal happiness, is your own individual joys, and pursuit of your own deep values, which a child often will impinge on by necessity. right? You're not going to be able to, like, if you're going to be even a decent parent, you have to give up some things, I would imagine, in order to
Yeah.
have time with this kid, because you have 24 hours in a day, you have only a certain amount of energy. So to me, that's the question. Is in the past, we had this duty kind of idea of doing this. You just get it done, you sacrifice, you whatever. And now we have a new model. And, it's just, how do we navigate that in this new world where it's easy to now separate as parents? And this is a big question that people have, is like, do I stick with this person? We've gone through the first 5 years. So I know that's a lot in
Yeah.
one question, but I guess the
Okay.
breakdown is the two models for parenting: duty versus something
Yes.
else.
Well, I think I should stop what you said to begin with. I think is important and right, that like some parents might actually believe that, yes, I have to get rid of a huge portion of my happiness. They might even hear that article and go, yes, your marriage, that's the sacrifice you make, is that your marriage might be tougher, and that's life. And I can see that, and I definitely disagree with that view. I think you want to figure out how you can make your life even better with a child, because if not, you don't bring something into this life thinking it's going to make my life worse. Like, that's not a good decision. If that's your thinking going in, don't have a child. We don't need more people miserable in the world. So I think this might come down to then, even separate from children, is it right to enjoy your life? Is it right to have a happy life? So I think it is. And I think it's important for us to do the work to figure out how to do that. And a big part of that is handling strong emotions. And then, while you're with yourself, like Kirk, you said you're not a parent, but you're a human being. And I have to imagine, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in work, difficult emotions arise, and you got to figure that out. Happiness isn't just given to you. So when you get in a marriage, you've got, again, as I said, another human being. It's very, very difficult. And then when you have a child, it's very, very difficult. So I think the morality of it, or, should you be happy? Yes, I think it's important to be happy. Now, in terms of doing it as a duty, if you have that, most likely you're going to be more and more miserable, and you're going to make your child miserable, because there's going to be this constant feeling that, for the child at least, my parents giving up things for me. So my parent isn't enjoying their life. I mean, how many times have you heard a parent say, "Oh, if I wanted to be X, but I had to stay home with you," that type of thing, which is not a good model for your child. Like, the model should be, wow, you could do so much in this world, and it's a joy. This place is a joy. So I just think this comes about through lack of thinking about, how do I actually lead a joyous life? And then when you have children, how do I live a joyous life when, as you noted, having a child is going to take away some of my joys. And one of them, actually, I was just talking about this thing called the Montessori Club. And one of the people in that group was raising that, he got frustrated because he just wanted to read a book. He just wanted to sit and just chill and read a book. And then his baby was crying. And he loves his baby, this girl. But so he's got this conflicting emotion of like, damn it, I just want to read.
Yeah.
But I also love the heck out of this baby girl. And I threw the book down and I said, you know what? I'll be able to read another time. I'm going to go deal with my baby. So I think in those moments, as small as that is, how are you going to handle those moments? How are you going to deal with the strong emotion? How are you going to think about that emotion? And then with your wife or your husband is on you like, hey, why aren't you with the baby? Well, why are you reading, or fill in the blank? How are you going to handle that? So those are difficult things. And you need work to be able to do that well.
So so it sounds like you're not for this whole older model of doing this because you have to, because that's miserable. Why add more misery to the world? Right?
Yeah, but
Is what you said.
Yeah, and I don't know if factually you say this is an older model. I just, historically, I haven't done enough research to know, particularly psychologically, how people approach their children. Because I know with older children, they have this, some people had a tremendous pride in, where is my child going? What's he going to become? But from, let's say, 0 to 6, which I spend a lot of time with, focused on, it's difficult to say exactly how people focused on this throughout all of history. But if you're talking about the guilt, like, you need to sacrifice to procreate because that's what you need to do for XY religion. Yeah, I'm definitely against that. I don't think that's right in any way. There's, to further their species, it means zero to me. Absolutely zero. That's not my goal, and I don't think that should be anybody's goal. for any particular reason. My goal is I want to enjoy my life, and I want to aid this child that I brought into it to enjoy his or her life. So
What have you heard of the natalist movement? The
the
pro-natalist movement?
natalist, no,
It's
prenatalist,
pro-natalist. It's a growing
pronatalism.
movement.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is kind of the figurehead of this in a sense. I don't know if he's actively part of it, but there, like for
Oh,
instance, there was a conference here in Austin
mm,
just recently, uh,
mm,
of I don't know how big it was, but it was mildly big, a couple hundred people or something. But they charged a good amount of money. But basically, it's the idea of promoting reproduction as a necessary, important thing. And
yeah,
I think there's different ways. I'm not an expert on the pro-natalist movement, but I think there's different arguments that they often use. One of the arguments being something like, um, we're going to hit a population, I don't remember the word they use for it, but a kind of barrier where we're going to
mm,
start breaking down and not being able to grow because we're just not having enough people. Right.
yeah,
So this, but again, this all sounds like what I was saying about the duty premise to the species, to the tribe, and that's the reason why people are saying we should do this. That's a big reason, anyway.
yeah.
And
And
yeah,
no, go finish it. Sorry, I don't know if that was.
no, that's basically it.
Yeah. So I think I recently saw this something about it was like Elon Musk and maybe Jeff Bezos. So there aren't enough people in our population. I didn't even click into that article because I really wasn't particularly interested in that, in what was going on. Um, but again, at anything, if you're looking at this like I'm going to have a kid so that his life will be better than mine, even
Mhm.
that, which I think is a sacrifice, because you're not having a child to do something bigger than yourself. Like you're
Mm.
having a child, in my view, you have a child to enjoy your life more fully.
Okay.
And as doing that, a part of that is aiding this child to enjoy his or her life to the absolute fullest. But the primary again is like you should not be having a child if you don't feel prepared. If your goal is to again further the species or to further my religion or to further, better people in the world, because we need more of the people like myself. We need better, anything beyond. I'm trying to enjoy my life a little bit better, and I think it's going to really, really be a good time. I've thought about it, and my wife, significant other, or even somebody outside of that, we want to do this. Go for it. But yeah, I'm not about sacrifice in any way in that sense. Yeah.
Okay, so something just occurred to me. This might be fun. Um,
Yeah.
so I've heard from these pronatalists or people like this certain arguments about, why I should have a kid, right? And
You,
so
Kirk,
to
personally,
me, Kirk
or
Barbera, yes.
okay.
And it's something that's been on my mind more recently in a way that it hasn't been before for various reasons. But I wonder so again, they're making these kinds of arguments of, it's a great thing. We need more people. Everyone should have, at least one or two kids so we can propagate the species, stuff like that. It's your Christian duty. Those are what I'm hearing. And then I also hear the narratives of it's hard. You have to give up a lot, probably won't be happy. Maybe you won't be able to have a social life for 10 years, things like that. Right. So that's the narrative that I hear. I'd wonder, like, what would your specific pitch to me be of why should consider it, especially knowing me a little bit. We've known each other for like 10, 12 years. Like if you were to just say, Kirk, let's have a beer. Let me tell you why I love having kids and why I think you might want to have a kid yourself. And again, I understand like my own free will. I have to
Yeah.
choose it. I understand that. But like, let's say you're trying to sell me on this a little bit. Like you
Yeah.
love it so much, you want to sell me on this thing.
Well, let me
This
start by
endeavor.
saying I listened to an interview of Elon Musk, a recent interview. And I really respect Elon Musk in many ways, and I don't, politically and all the kind of pop culture stuff that's going on with X and all that I just don't even get involved. But just talking about Elon Musk and kind of successes that he's done, he said something like, "I know people would want to trade lives with me, but I don't know if you would. You
Mm,
wouldn't really want to."
I would want
and
to.
and but I think he's explicitly meaning like he works all the time, and
Mhm.
it's this sense again that he's driven to do all this stuff to better humanity.
Yeah.
But it sounds very stressful. It sounds very anxiety driven. Um, so, anyways, it's a lot of it just seems anxiety driven, or at least it's anxiety inducing that life. So, just I don't think a life focused on what I can do to further something beyond myself, and you've just lost the sense of, am I actually enjoying this? Am I having fun? You know.
Yeah.
So with you, the first thing I would say, I'm telling you 100% is like people that say, oh, I want a kid to have a kid so badly that I'm just going to have a child and I don't have a significant other to have them with. I would highly question that. I'm not talking about psychologically. I'm
That's
just
not what
talking about,
I'm saying.
yeah, I know, no, but I'm just putting that out there because you're talking, if I was talking to you having a beer, it's like, it's not like you're saying, hey, I've been with this girl or this,
Oh,
whoever,
okay.
whomever. So it's a lot of work. And it's also like, you want to have somebody by your side. At least I think it's important to have somebody by your side that you love, that you're
Mhm.
doing this together. It's kind of like, it's a mission, like not a mission, but like an enjoyable, we're doing this as together. It's kind of like your work. You got a partner. I think there's something really special to that. The second thing I would say is it's, it, I don't want to BS. Like it actually, I felt that this is a lot of work. It actually is a lot of work, and it's a lot of work that you have to do. And it's a lot of times, I don't say a lot of time, it's not a good amount of time. I'd rather be doing something else. I know not everybody's going to say that, but there are times when I would rather be doing something else, but I have to do this because it's just the state of my current situation. So two things I would say. One is I would give you a lot of advice around ensure that you are economically in a state that you can hire a nanny. If you want to go out for 5 hours with your wife or significant other or by yourself, you could just get a nanny that you trust and you've thought about it, or a family member that you trust and you care for, and they can come over. So I would just be very clear that you have support that can come over and aid you, because that can take a load off of those moments when like you're like, damn, I don't want to just go get a beer with my buddy.
Mhm.
If you have that feeling, Kirk, what are you going to do? You know.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. On the positive end, I think it's just that it having a child, I'm already, because I've been living in a certain way where I'm trying my best to kind of look at the world and enjoy the world to the fullest. I think I'm pretty good at that. But having a child, having Ragnar, my son, it's just is elevated that to another level. Because you're seeing the world anew through your child. So there's just such an excitement, a joy. Like we go to the zoo probably once every 2 weeks on average. And man, it's just so cool watching this kid look at the animals. And I already love animals myself, so I love looking at them. So if you can think of something that you enjoy doing, Kirk, that's related to nature, because anything abstract, you could throw it out the door right now. When you have a kid, those first few years, he's not interested in it. And it's not like, oh, here, Ragnar, watch me work. And I'm typing away on the keypad. Like that's not good for his age.
Yeah.
So you have to go back and think, okay, so what are things that he can enjoy? Like I'm out there on, behind me, we've got an acre. So these things called air potatoes, they fall on the ground from these trees. Like it's an invasive species. So I have to go out there and pick them. So I was like, I'm going to bring Ragnar out there with me. And it's so cool that he's like, oh, there's one. And he gets pumped up and he goes and picks them. So it's just, that would have been me alone out there just picking these air potatoes and maybe being like, damn it, I'd rather not be picking these, or I hire somebody to pick them, where now it's fun picking air potatoes.
Yeah.
Because I've got this little guy with me and he's learning, he's growing. He's not sitting in front of a screen just watching, nonsense on Netflix or whatever. So there's a lot of joys that just would not happen otherwise.
So the question, I guess, is in this happiness context, because that seems to be what we're thought to, that even you're saying you're giving things up. So it's a big challenge to like find happiness. Now you're also saying, you're arguing that there's a sense where that doesn't have to be the state where you're losing happiness. But the way to do that, if I understand you, and if you could expand on this, is having the proper mentality ahead of time. Right. It is part of, with the right person, with the right mentality, the right finances. So do you think that is essential to not losing happiness prior to having a child? And therefore, do you have to wait till your 30s is what I think
and that's
some of that sounds like?
I would say to the extent you can plan ahead, but like if you're 25, you've got enough cash, your wife or husband has enough cash, you feel financially stable, you like your career, whatever's going on in your own life where you feel good in yourself to a certain extent, like we're all constantly growing. So, um, you at some point you got to hop into the fire and go, listen, how can you ever truly be prepared for bringing a child into the world that you've had zero experience bringing your own child into this world? Like to some extent, you're always you're a novice from day one. Like, so I'm not saying wait until you're 40 and you're kind of, you've reached your Socrates level of wisdom and insight. That's impossible. I am saying you want to think ahead. What type talk like you, Kirk, you talked to a bunch of parents and asked them questions for this. Well, if you're thinking, even considering having a baby, talk to at least 10 people that you care about who have children and just ask them insight. What are the good times? What are the bad times? What should I be looking out for? Maybe write some of that stuff down and then think, am I ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I ready for that? That it's possible my child could be waking up in the middle of the night for 6 months straight. Am I ready for that? Like, so just you want to ask those things before. I'm not saying that is the key to having sustained marriage and happy marriage with kids or something like that. I'm not an expert in marriages across America, across the world, and how to sustain them. But I'm saying being thoughtful about any decision you're going to jump into, especially one that you are with for the rest of your life, as long, hopefully your child, nothing tragic happened, but you need to do that. And then the second, Kirk, is when you're in the situation, my view is almost there's some practical things you can do with children that really aid your life. But I would say 75+% of problems adults have with children is problems with themselves. So my number one thing is you really need to get better at knowing yourself and observing your child, observing yourself. How do I react when my child reacts one way? That I think is going to be the key towards happiness and joy long range with your child. You can get upset in the moment. I can be sad in the moment. I can be angry in the moment, but we're talking about happiness long range. We're not talking about, oh, I'm always like, hey, let's have, pina coladas. We're always happy. Like that's not the happiness I'm talking about.
Pina colada.
So observation is huge, like just being able to observe your child and then being able to observe yourself. How am I responding? What am I feeling right now? Am I acting on those feelings without thinking about it? Those are huge, huge things as parents.
So the most important thing it sounds like is you have to be able to work on yourself
Yeah, that's
and
the beginning.
to develop yourself to do the right kinds of observations internally, introspection, to kind of see what's important to you, why you act and behave in certain ways. Now, the question I get, so then it sounds almost like parenting requires a desire for self-help, self-development. So is that a necessary thing, or do you think every
Well,
human should do
when you
that? Like,
say a desire, I think if you think about that article that you started with, you might call it a desire, like I had an interest, but a lot of times these things come because you're on fire, like not literally on fire, but you are losing your shit and you don't know what to do. And at some point, you might lose it so much when these marriages break up, people go through, anxiety attacks, the classic, midlife crisis, all that type of stuff. It's because you really haven't handled stuff. So I think if we had a proper development as children, we'd be thinking about these issues much earlier. But a lot of times they come up because chaos ensues, or like, I don't know what to do with my child. My child won't eat anything. My child won't sleep. My child's hitting me. My child, hits his brother. And you lose it. So I can't tell you how many parents are just like, I yell at my child and I hate myself for it. So there comes a moment when they're seeking out aid. This is a lot of times it happens with me because people will call or write me and they want, to do some kind of consulting because I don't know what to do.
yeah,
So I think I don't know what to do. If you're at that stage, it's not just, oh, well, here's some tips on how to, get your child to eat healthier food, which I can go through. We could go through that all day, Kirk. But if you're flipping because your child won't eat food, it's bigger than the food. It's not about, I like to say, it's not about the chicken wings or chicken fingers. You know what I'm saying? So,
um, Yeah, so I mean, like I've heard this idea of like we download our problems onto our kids in a sense, or like,
Mm.
and you're saying it's kind of it really is us and how we deal with stuff. So I guess I'm trying to move in a direction of this conversation of like, well, what are if self development is not the only thing or the only way to look at this, how do we go into these parenting situations and parenting life change of being a parent by I don't know without fixing ourselves completely and does this make sense? I'm trying to get at like
Yeah,
it
yeah. I
seems
think,
like a chicken or egg type
yeah,
scenario
but
where
this
it's like,
is,
oh, I have to become better and then have a kid or do it, you know what I'm saying? Like how do you deal
but
with
this is, that's what I was trying to get at. I think this is a theory practice dichotomy. And I think there is no such thing as fixing myself completely, whatever that would mean. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. It's just like you can't write a book by sitting in your room and thinking about it all day.
that?
So
Mhm.
I'm not talking about introspection, like you sit on a couch and talk with a therapist and that is your work. No, that's not your work. The work is, let's say you come home one day and you just worked a whole day. You get home and you're supposed to now be, this is not my life, but this is very regular. You come home, you're supposed to be with the child. First thing you walk through the door, a child throws something in your face, right? You could feel so good about yourself before that. You feel good in your business. You've got a lot of self-confidence, but this just sets you off for some reason. I'm I'm not saying you should have fixed yourself before you had a kid to handle such a situation. Like you can't. So the situation happens, you might even lose your crap in the moment and yell at your child. The question is after that in my now you do want to get to the point where you're not yelling at your child, but I don't want to guilt everybody and be like, don't yell at your child. Let's say you yelled at your child, you should later that night, or if the weekend you don't have time immediately, you should jot down, I yelled at my child. This is how I felt in the moment. I just want to chill. Just write that down. Get the emotion out. Then once you've got that emotion out, go, I just want to chill, but you have a child. And
Yeah.
let's say your wife was at home or your husband was at home and they were with the child the whole day. And now you're angry at them for no reason. They didn't do anything wrong. And now the marriage is getting frustrated. So try to figure out how much of this is your responsibility. Maybe you need to talk with your wife about it. But this is an ongoing thing. There is no overnight solution. You don't call me, hey, let me call Jesse and get the overnight solution. And tomorrow everything's going to be grand. Like that's not how it works. But I think that again, keeping in mind this happiness perspective is, man, there are going to be days that are kind of crappy. But
Mhm.
overall, I can work on it to the point where it gets better and better to when I'm like, yeah, I'd rather not deal with this right now, but you know what, I'm going to handle it. And then all of a sudden you change your mindset and you're having this joyous experience with your child because you're like, oh, let's clean this stuff up. And you're sitting on the floor cleaning this stuff up and you haven't cleaned anything in 20 years because you've been having a maid do it. And it's kind of nice to be cleaning with this year and a half year old. So it just you have a mindset shift. um
Well,
so
okay. So that last part, I was going to say something, but that last part, you have a mindset shift. How do you get parents there? Because that a
so
mindset shift is difficult to have, right? So and I know you coach Montessori educators at montessorieducation.com, but you also do some parenting coaching, I
oh
believe,
yeah, a
right?
lot.
And so
Yeah, a lot.
people
Yeah.
literally come to you, they, pay into this model to have you as a coach to help them and you
Mm.
coach them through it. So yeah, I mean, so it sounds like having a mindset shift for some people may be the important thing, or maybe everybody. How do you activate that?
I
Like,
have to say that when I say a mindset shift, again, I don't think this is even those people that say, like, oh, I had an accident and it made, a near death experience and now I love life. I don't like those talks because I know they're BS. Now they're true
mm,
in one sense. They're true that they had a mindset shift like I'm talking about. It's like, oh my God, what about, but it's not like 2 weeks later when they'd rather be doing something or their boss gets angry at them, they're just like, oh, I love life. I like that's not the way our actual humanness works. Like we have to deal with these emotions. So I think that mindset shift, what I love about those near life experiences and what I try my best to do is like, if we can get more near life experiences, but not with near death experiences, sorry, without almost dying, I think that would be very good because they really do shake you. That's the mindset shift. It will shake you. Like
Do
I
you have
might
a
show a video. I
recommendation on
might
how to
show,
do that?
yeah, I think there's some, I mean, there's a few things. Like you could even watch my intro, What is Montessori? On YouTube. It's a really popular YouTube video. And you just, there might be a couple examples that really hit you in an emotional way that are like, damn, I need to rethink how I'm doing things.
Okay.
Or one of my best ways to do this is I would say for the parent, go observe in a very, very good Montessori classroom and just sit there for an hour. And I have a feeling most people that went to traditional school or most people that remember their childhoods that were not like everything was amazing, it's going to be emotional because it's like, this is a peaceful play. This is the way the world should be. And it really hits you. But that mindset shift just means that, oh, I'm seeing children in a different way. I might be seeing myself in a different way.
Mhm.
And now I have to do a ton of work and it's ongoing in those different situations. Again, sleep. I'm sleep deprived. I wake up in the morning and my child wants to be in my arms all the time.
Mhm.
What do you do? Well, I've had a mindset shift that should be just be like, oh, it's fine. No. So you have to start acknowledging your emotions. I actually, let's say, parent, I don't really want to do this right now. I'd rather my child be independent than step aside. And we would walk through, what does it mean for your child to be independent? What, allow yourself to feel that, you know what, I don't really want my child in my arms right now. Or the opposite, Kirk, which happens a lot, is I want my child in the arms. I'm dropping my 5-year-old off at school. Oh, and I want to carry him to the door. We're talking about a 5-year-old that can walk. So you might be
Mm,
taking away your child's sense of independence. So we
yeah.
we go into these very concrete things and then draw out bigger, notions for your own self and then for how to better your child's life.
Well, do you have advice? Because not everybody can have you as a coach. You're busy,
Mhm.
limited time. What should people do, or what is some practical advice for people to try to improve in the mindset shift on their own? Like, do you have resources? What,
Yeah. So, I
just
mean,
go
one thing I
watching
would
your
say is,
videos, or go ahead.
yeah, I just started a thing called the Montessori Club a couple months back. It's $9 a month. I highly recommend parents jump in, even if you don't get involved in the community, which I think is my favorite part personally. But it's a lot of Montessorians diving deep. There is an area of it that's called the classroom that has videos, it has recommended books, and I'll just tell you a couple of the recommended books. I think they're huge. But there's one, Maria Montessori Speaks to Parents, I
Mm,
think is a huge book that kind of gets at the essence of Montessori for parents. Very simple book. So that's why I recommend it. There's a man named Haim Ganot who has a book called Between Parent and Child that I think is very insightful about how to deal with strong emotions. When your child's flipping out on you, and you can expand on that for yourself to think about how do I deal with my own strong emotions. And then there's a couple other books that dive a little deeper, but I think starting out with a couple books that I think really aided me in my development is helpful. Um, but there is no here is the answer outside of doing the work. So yes, if you have the money and you have the resources, you can reach out to me and I can aid you one-on-one or even in a small group. If not, my second thing would say go to montessorieducation.com, get into the Montessori Club, and there's some resources there that you can look at, including these book recommendations, but more. That would be a good start. And then if after that start you're like, well, this isn't enough, I don't know what to do, again, reach out and maybe I can give you some other resources beyond that. But the point is, you have to start somewhere. And starting somewhere, in my view, at least the resources that I have, you can go to this club. You can go to montessorieducation.com, which is completely free. And there's a lot of resources there as well.
I wanted to stick on one thing with the mindset shift, because this is actually important to
Yeah.
me and what I think is interest, or one of the roles of literature and art in general, of giving you new perspectives and things like that. But have you ever heard of the practice? Not just, so you probably have heard the term memento mori,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. Remember you will die, essentially. Remember you are mortal.
Yeah.
And I've heard of this in these new Stoics and today as a kind of practical meditation, meditating on death. there's this businessman, Gary Vaynerchuk, who he has this whole shtick where he's talked about the way he appreciates and has gratitude for his family every single day, intense gratitude that he claims he has, which I believe him, is that he actually meditates on them potentially dying. Like he
Hmm.
envisions, a cop coming to his house and telling him that your kids and family are dead. And
Yeah.
the reason he does that is because when you have that feeling that he's able to manifest in himself, he like when he sees his kids, he squeezes the hell out of them, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's that mem of like, oh my gosh, this might end. I love. What do you think about that as a practice? I mean,
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts on that as a
So one,
practice?
I'd say definitely send me what you saw because I'm curious how he's wording it, and just to squeeze my child like hell. It's a very classic like, when I saw my child for the first time, my life changed and so forth. And I think I didn't have that experience because I've been working with kids for 20 years and I just love it, but I think I'm unique in that sense that I don't relate to that. But with the near death experience, it's kind of like that, but you're expanding it to your family. So I think there's probably something to that. I mean, the moments when I've had that, even with my own wife, Alessandra, it really does put things in perspective. The idea of potentially losing her is like, oh my God, well, it's like, oh, you want to love her so much more because of that. So I think there's something there. I don't think that's probably the healthiest thing to be constantly reminding yourself
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
your loved ones are going to die. I think there's probably better ways to go about that. But as a quick jolt of like, stop being an asshole to your family,
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, that might be a good one. Because I can imagine, I mean, this is a horrific kind of analogy, but imagine your friend plays a prank on you because everybody's doing these pranks on YouTube that are crazy in my mind. But like, oh, you're calling the hospital. Where's your wife? Something like that. That would probably shake a jerk up. But again, is that really the way that you want to go about this? It's kind of like another example is like, I bet you becoming a drug addict and then getting past it could have a very positive impact on your life.
They're
But
getting past it.
there's getting past it, yeah,
Yeah.
because you have this contrast. So I
Yeah.
think what he's hit on is that contrasts are very, very helpful. It's like that. Who was it? Lorenzo de Medici. I think he said, enjoy the present because tomorrow may never come. I think it's the
Mhm.
Medici, but it's something similar. And I think that's a good way. There's a good element. And Steve Jobs said this. He said, every day I look in the mirror and say, if this were to be my last day, would I want to be doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And when the answer is no, too many times, he doesn't say when the answer is no, because that's problematic. You're just going off mark. When the answer is no too many times, then I need to do something about that. So again, I think there's something practically probably helpful about thinking about mortality and knowing that you're going to die and you have a limited time here. But I don't think it's a daily practice that I would want to constantly be remembering death all the time. Um, and I wonder if is he picturing how people would die or just that they're not here? Like how vivid is this?
It's a
Yeah.
pretty long, it's been years ago since I've seen him talk about this, but I remember he talked about like a crash or something like that. Like he
Mm-hmm.
pictured a car crash with his family in it or something of that
Yeah.
nature. And to me, the value of these kinds of things, I agree. It's probably problematic to do this too much, but the value is that it's in the imagination, and as long as you understand the distinction between imaginative and reality, in terms of you can separate reality in your mind. To me, there is a value in meditation on the fact that we're mortal, which means that we're
Yeah.
limited, and that there's some, because I think in our day and age we don't have that reminder like in olden times where
Yeah. Like the
people,
reality of it.
yeah, reality of death is
Yeah.
all to the side. We don't think about death. We put people in
Mm-hmm.
hospice and think, then they pass. We go to a funeral once in a while, and that's it.
Yeah.
And like the reality of it is very distant from us in a modern sense. So I think it's, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think we just have to remind ourselves that things don't last forever,
Yeah.
including the fact that your kid's not going to be 5 years old forever. They're going to be a teenager that's going to probably hate you for a little bit. And so
Yeah.
appreciating that time and really relishing it as a deep value in and of itself. And the question is, how do you remind yourself, as you're talking about, in those moments when you just want a beer and to watch a TV show at the end of the day, and you have
Yeah.
someone who's yelling at you or something like that, or screaming for you, right?
Yeah. And what I would say, two things that jump with what you're saying is, one is this reminder that we are going to die. I do think there's a detachment from reality in our educational system. So nothing in traditional education today reminds children that they're actually living a life. So you're
Yeah.
sitting in a room learning about subjects that are detached. You're not doing anything, almost anything physical besides maybe pee and running out. So your whole life is detached from actual living. So they're so separated from death. So I agree with that. I had a college professor who he said, he gave this experiment. He said, okay, I want you guys to go to the biggest hill. We were in California, clearly Florida, you're not going to any hills. So I don't know where people would have gone, but in California, we had these big hills. So, and he said, I want you to go to the biggest hill and just stand at the cliff and just look down and then come back to class. And what do you think most people that were standing on the cliff, he said, bring your feet all the way to the edge. So they look down and one of your big thoughts is, oh, holy crap, I could fall off and die. And
Yeah.
he was just awakening to the reminder that, yeah, we're dead, we could die. But I would frame it as like a reminder of life. So I think what happens in a lot of marriages, and I can even see this at times, again, I'm not immune to this, is that you get so wrapped up in the day to day that this is just, oh, you're just doing, you change your child, then he does this, then you go to sleep. Like you forget that this is all we have. This is it, this moment. So I think it's a reminder of life. Like if I'm changing Ragnar, it's not like, oh man, I gotta get through this poop again or something like that. It's like, oh, I'm interacting with my son here. He's learning these things. So all of a sudden you start to look at it from a different perspective. So in the moment, I think it's very important to allow yourself the emotion that like, oh my God, I don't want to deal with a diaper. And then go, okay, but I have to. So am I going to waste portions of my life by being frustrated, or am I going to try to look at this from a different perspective and enjoy more of my life? Because this is all I got. If I, if I don't know, somebody breaks in my house and robs me a minute later, this is my last experience here. This is it. So do I want to be complaining and bitching about changing a diaper, or do I want to be like, giggling around with my son going, oh yeah, you got quite a big poop today. Let's check it out. Let's have some
Is that
fun
what
with
you
it. So
do?
sometimes, but he's getting so he's potty, he potty trained now. So
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
kind of getting to a better state. I shouldn't say a better state, a developmental state that I think it's more
It's better
exciting
for
for me. But
you.
yeah, it's better for me that I wouldn't have to change that as much. But again, I'm saying like we to the extent that we can get ourselves in a mindset of enjoying the life to the fullest. And if you really hate changing diapers, then figure out a way for somebody else to do it. Or get a better sense of, okay, when I'm in that moment, how can I get myself to a place where it's not
Okay,
that
so
bad? Yeah.
that was a core thing to me. Is like you're saying if you really hate it, find ways around it while still getting the job done essentially. And but the core thing to me is being honest with yourself and that you are recognizing that that's a something you really don't like to do is the
Mhm.
changing of the diapers. Now of course you still probably will have to do it occasionally unless you're never going to be with your kid until he's
Yeah.
of a certain age. But I think like here's one concern I have. I'm going to be honest. So
Mhm.
you're one of the more happy-go-lucky people by nature. I've known you since 2011, 12, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when we were at Laporte once, like me and this other teacher were just walking around with you, and you were just like jumping onto things, and
Okay.
you really
Yeah, I was
enjoyed
playing.
that.
That's
Just playing, right?
inappropriate.
You're just like, how high can I jump onto
Didn't
this
I
thing?
get in trouble for that or something, Kirk? I
I
don't
think
know.
so. Yeah, one of the schools
Okay.
were like, "Why are you jumping on that bookcase?" Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you're a
That's
grown
right.
adult,
That's right. It was the book.
and
Okay.
like, and there, you and I have done certain activities together, and I think I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy, joyous person in general, but I think you're even on a higher level in a sense.
Mhm.
So, but most people are not like that. Like most people are
Yeah.
not that. Don't find the joy in every little thing. So, what do they do? They're not you,
Yeah,
in
but
other words.
that's what I'm trying. I want to get across that these some of these examples are coming from me. Like I'm not going, Oh, I can't wait to change the 10th diaper today. I'm just so excited. Let's
Wait, wait,
jump
wait.
on.
10
Like,
in a day?
I,
I'm just kidding.
I'm saying yeah, but that's
Like
something to
I'm
think
just saying
about
as a
when you're,
non-parent.
yeah, but it's
So,
in the early months. I mean, you're changing. I don't know if it's 10 diapers a day, but it's a lot of diapers a day. So, and
yeah.
again, I don't want to put this across. When we were together, there were moments. I don't know what year we stopped. At Laporte when you left or I left. I don't know what
Like
the timing
13. It's
was.
only a couple of years, but yeah.
Okay, but whatever the
13,
case,
14.
yeah, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, but I had challenges. Like I had emotional challenges that I had to deal with, even being happy-go-lucky. Like so, I think whatever your natural state is, if you are quote happy-go-lucky and nothing gets to you, which was definitely not my case, but I agree with you. I'm somewhat of a generally happier person. You still got to deal with issues that arise. And if you're upset, like if you caught me in a bad mood, I don't think I would have ripped your head off. It's just not my nature, as you said. But I've worked on not being defensive around people. You know what
Okay,
I'm
so
saying? So
that's the core of it. Is
yeah, the point
working
is
on
where
you conscientiously worked on yourself to
oh
get
yeah,
there.
I didn't. This is there. I think there is some element of truth to we might have natural predispositions to certain traits. I think that might be the case. But the amount of work that goes into I want to be more of this or less of that. It's very, very important. So I take myself, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, but I remember at one point being like actually feeling jealousy of somebody who had a career as a lawyer because they were doing something important and they were making a lot of money. And
Yeah.
I had to recognize, I remember the feeling of like, damn, like, what am I doing? I don't even know this person. I don't know if they're happy, miserable, but all of a sudden, like, something's wrong with me and they're great for this. So that's the type of stuff I'm saying you have to stop and sit on. Don't
Mhm.
let that feeling pass. Now I definitely did a lot of introspection so I could see it, but don't let that pass. And then don't dwell on it. Don't be like, oh, what's wrong with me that I'm jealous? What kind of person? It's just like you really got to acknowledge that emotion, be okay with it, and then just go, okay, let me dig into it. But again, I don't want to make this stuff seem low. This is a lot of work. But if you approach it, in my view, if you approach it with that, damn, yeah. But even finding stuff that I don't like about myself now, I got to be straight with you. It's wild, but I like it. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
split second where I don't like it. There's a split second where, like, if I have an experience, like, oh man, like I don't know what these days, but there's split, and then I'm like, oh, that's cool. I just found something new. It's almost like a discovery if you're a scientist, you know. Um,
Which
it's
again is a
something new.
mindset.
Yeah, it
That's
was a
definitely a
shift.
mindset that you have
That's
to
why I'm
have.
saying the shift.
Yeah. So there's part of it is thinking about parenting and really any new large endeavor as an opportunity to try to find different ways to understand yourself, your what you want out of life and your relationship to the universe in a sense. Like I need to figure out, you know, like I haven't been doing a lot of introspection. I haven't been thinking about, now I'm in this moment where introspection's more important than ever, using this as a chance to try to actually do that. Because I don't think most people do that. I think it's pretty rare,
Yeah,
real introspection. I mean, everybody has thoughts in their head, but that's different than introspection. Like introspection's real kind
yeah,
of observation of like why I behave like this a lot, right? This happen, like people
yeah.
point this out to me, and or that it's that much, it's overflowing. So what is this? Why? What do I feel in those moments, and how do I get out of that mode for the future? And I mean, I'll just say that I think one barrier to this is that on some level, people don't really believe that you can change your character. They don't put it that way maybe, but I think they think we are who we are, right? I am who I am, and that's just it. And so that seems to be a really critical mindset, or, a really critical idea people need to have in order to get through this. Because some parents, I mean, I've heard this all the time. It's like, my parents were overweight, that's why I'm overweight, that's why my
Yeah,
kids are overweight. Like that kind of genealogical,
yeah,
issue. And I think having a coach is a good way out of that, in a sense of like having somebody who can help you see, okay, like if you do this kind of pattern just today for 5 minutes when your kid is eating, do this, right? Because I know eating is a big problem for little kids. right? So like that kind of thing, having external help that's helping push you through. It's just like if you're a fitness trainer, like, and you've never worked out, well, if you can afford a fitness trainer that can come and, either work with you or you go to them 3 times a week, that can help move you into, now you're going to have better, habits for the future. Even if they're
Yeah.
not as great as they should be, it's going to be better than they were, type thing. Does that
Yeah.
sound good synopsis of what you're saying?
Most definitely. So to start, I definitely agree that having a coach, whether you're doing physical therapy, mental therapy, parenting, coaching, like if you can have a coach that knows what they're doing and has experience and some wisdom, it can be instrumental in your growth. If you don't have it, it's going to be more challenging, but I still think it's possible. And what I think you're talking about is just having a growth mindset, or a sense that, and I can do this. Si se puede in español. There's like, you can do it. But even that is, I mean, there's a philosophical thing there of, do I have free will? Can I actually change myself? And then there's the emotional. Have you grown up with a feeling that you can change? Because people yell this at you, like, si se puede, you can do it. Whatever the new slang is around, you could. That's not enough if most of your life you've believed that you're incapable, or I'm gonna end up like my mom, or when I yell at my child, it's just like my mom, and I hate myself for it because I told myself I would never be like that, but now I am. Well, I almost want to say, no shit, you are, because you were raised by her for 18 years.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that you're doing the same things. That doesn't mean you have to, but it would be weird if somehow you came out of a childhood where for the first 5 years where you're basically not self-conscious, you're absorbing what your mom is doing to you as this is what we do as human beings. Then it's, free will. We all have free will, but you lived 5 years of your life without being able to look into your own thoughts. That's a lot of time, man.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is that you've got to put in the work, but the work is real. And I think the point that you're talking about with introspection, again, it's not just, oh, I thought about how I felt today. No, it's work. I sit down and I write these things out. A quick way to think about it, I don't know if you ever saw the show. I think it's called Friday Night Lights. It was like a football.
I saw the
It's
movie.
okay, the movie. I don't know even
I've
know,
never
because
seen the
that might
show.
be very different. I'm not sure. But anyways, the show itself is not important. But the saying, the football team, I think it was a high school football team, would come out and every day they would hit this thing. And there was a saying that was, clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. And I think that's a good, I've been thinking about this. I think it's a good way to look at being a parent, is that if you have clear eyes, you're actually observing, trying to get rid of the prejudice that you're coming in with. And you're just, you think through things. You're just clear. So it's clarity. It's kind of like the reasoning mind. And then full heart, you're experiencing your emotions. You're not pushing them away. You're just going like, okay, I'm angry right now. You really experience it. If you do both of those things, clear eyes, full heart, and then, there's a lot of work, but you can't lose. And I don't mean it in like you literally can't lose, like your child's going to do everything you want, you're always going to win the game. It's no, even when you lose a game, even when your child yells at you, even when you feel like crap at work, you can't lose, because you're going in it thinking, okay, I'm going to observe, I'm going to think about how I was, I'm going to allow myself to feel it, even if I don't like the feeling that I have. And you think it through. So you can't lose. So I think the being able to think through things conceptually, like the introspection, and really feeling things. So clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. So if you really go in it with that, and you do the work, things can be a lot of fun. Things can be a lot of fun. But again, I want to make it clear. I might be jumping on furniture and so forth, having fun, but it is not all the time. Happiness
Yeah.
does not mean you are happy every single second, every moment. I can get angry with Alessandra. Anger is not my big thing. I can get frustrated, but it's like,
But
this is life.
yeah, no, I get it. I mean, what I'm trying to get at is that you have now you've worked at it, but you have a positive temperament. You have an upbeat, benevolent temperament that not everybody has. And therefore the barrier might be, or the path might be longer, darker, harder to get there. And so what do they do? right? And
Yeah,
that's
and what I want to get at it, I think of this as kind of like, those people that say, well, impoverished children, the people that are children that are poor have a harder life than rich kids. I don't think that's true. So if I think about myself, you see me as having a happy demeanor, but then the error could be, well, I don't want to show these children that I'm working with as a teacher in my early days, Kirk,
yeah,
right? I don't
yeah,
want to show them any weakness. I remember a girl coming up to me, this eighth grader, and she was just like, I think of you as like Superman. You just can't get anything wrong. And I remember having this sense of like pride, like, yeah. And it's like, is that what I want to get across? That I can never get anything wrong? Because I know in myself, that's what I was shooting for. And that's not
yeah.
healthy. That's unhealthy to think you will never get any. I like that she looked up to me because I think that was very good. But the fact that I was like somehow proud that this girl thought I could never get anything wrong, dude, that's unhealthy.
One of the things I
You
like,
know?
there's certain literature professors that I like listen to on different areas for courses I'm working on or whatever. And the ones that I like the most are the ones that as they interact they with the audience or they're interacting with the text, you can tell that they're working through and they don't have a final conclusion and they're willing to admit that in public,
Yeah.
right? Like there's certain intellectuals who it seems like they always have to be right and have all the answers before they get on
Yeah.
stage or something. And I think that's a problematic viewpoint, even if they do have certain good final conclusions, because like you're saying, like it projects the wrong kind of mentality. Because the way the mind actually works is you're constantly trying to figure out new and better ways of doing things and thinking about things. And I like
Yeah.
to see that in practice with good teachers, where it's like, oh, I had that interpretation a little bit not precise, and I can work on that a little bit. That's good. And for students to see that, like, oh, okay, so that's okay to do that. I don't have to have it all put together when I get out there. I can do this too and make it. So I think that's a good model as a separate thing. Now, before Jesse, do you have time for a quick poem and maybe a couple questions still, or do you got to get going?
Yeah, go for it. We'll
Okay.
see until my wife and child come home and ruin
Okay.
everything.
Ruin everything.
I'm
Yes, I
kidding,
know.
dude.
What are we talking about here? This is all a facade, Jesse.
But you know what's funny? This
You
is
just
such
put
a
on.
this is a great example, just as a concrete example of like my wife and I plan these type of things. So when I'm doing, I'm on your podcast, chatting, but if I'm doing a video or a Zoom call or a meeting with a client, we plan these things so that she has her free time, I have my free time. So we've planned these things ahead of time. But in the beginning, maybe we didn't plan. I'm like, oh, I'm angry. It's like, well, then plan better, dude. So anyway, just a very concrete
I
example.
have to say, like I always talk to people about like their COVID experience,
Uh-huh.
and it's come as a shock, but I guess I get it now a little bit. I get it, where the ones who say it actually wasn't that bad to me were people who had very young kids. And
Mm,
I've heard this a couple times because it's like there's this guy I just met the other day in Palo Alto, and he was talking about like, yeah, we got lucky and we actually had our daughter like a month before the lockdowns in California. And so they
mm,
avoided it. But so in other words, they were able to
yeah.
they work from home. They normally both work, they're very busy people working, but they got to work from home and they got to like actually be with their child all the time. And they actually saw it as like that was really
Yeah.
cool. And me, I was like jumping off a bridge type that it was miserable for
Yeah.
me. It was the most miserable experience of my life. But it was just interesting because I was like, oh yeah, that's a good mentality of like, yeah, you get to be with your kid. Now that does I'm not pro COVID lockdowns, blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying, like
let me and let me just say, the majority of parents I talk to after a certain time were like, I don't care what school I'm sending this kid to or where he needs to get out of the house. So there reached a moment where people are like, because they don't know what they're doing. At a certain point, if you're teaching your child, like they're
well,
at a
that's
certain
another
age,
thing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This was
But
like
anyway,
firstborn. It's
yeah,
like
I
just an
think you're
infant that
oh
first
yeah,
year
that's
or
like
two,
it's
but
perfection.
it
They're not
was
even supposed
good
to be
time.
out that much, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it
So
was
it's good.
good. Okay, this is a short poem
Cool.
called Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. And
Okay.
I'll just read it real quick. I think it's a very simple idea.
Cool.
Uh, well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I's been a climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So, boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps because you find it's kinder hard. Don't you fall now, for I's still going, honey. I's still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair.
Yeah.
So the thing I like about this is Langston Hughes, so he's capturing a certain linguistic, from I think his mother. Um, but the idea is that this is a mother whose life isn't easy, and her son is going through a problem. I think her life isn't a crystal stair like in a fancy house, something like that. There's tacks and splinters, boards torn up, and things like that. Places with no carpet, but that it's worth. I like that the idea of it's worth moving on. It's worth continuing, and she is providing the model to her son of continuing to move up and to continue to try harder and harder and not give up even when things aren't crystal stairs, even when you're jumping on things and happy go lucky, but there's hard things going on in your life. So just a simple poem about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, it got me a little bit emotional because I think of my own mom. My parents divorced at 4, and my mom went to California. My dad stayed in New York, and my mom, I mean, I love them both, but my mom really, she just kicked ass, and she kept pushing and pushing herself, and she climbed business wise.
Mhm.
And I mean, I can imagine now I've been having a child, being a single mom, it's huge. So I think it's really important, as you were noting, it's important for us to share challenges we
Mhm.
have or uncertainties that we have. And that doesn't mean that we've got to be like on Facebook going, oh, the time when we got divorced was miserable and I had to live on this. And you just go through this, just pour everything out on,
Yeah. Yeah.
random people that didn't even ask for. I mean, that's not good. But just to, again, I don't want to say be human in the sense that, oh, everybody's got vulnerabilities and stuff, but be human in the sense that challenge, like life hits you with challenges. Um, so I like this, that the mom is kind of sharing that, hey, I've had some tough times. I know you're going through some tough times. I'm still kicking ass. I'm still out there fighting, getting things done. Um, keep at it. I don't know with everything Langston Hughes does, but I don't want it to be that sense that life is a battle. So that can be something where, I can start moving a different direction, because I don't want it to be life is a battle. Life has challenges, that's the nature of things, uncertainties, but it's not like life is kind of miserable and you're going to get kicked down and somebody's going to step on you and then you just got to keep pushing through it, son. Like, I don't like that. It's got a tinge of that, but I take it more in the positive realm of like, hey man, I've had it tough too. We're like each other. Let's keep going. That type of thing. I like that. So
Hmm.
appreciate it.
Yeah. And there's definitely a sense in the center of the poem that's, but all the time I's been a climbing and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't no light, but I keep going essentially.
Yeah.
And so I understand what you're saying. This is a longer conversation for about the life is not a battle. So maybe some other time.
Yeah.
Because I agree that it's not the perfect analogy, but it definitely captures something very important
Yeah.
about life, I think. Okay, so how about a couple maybe rapid fire questions, depending on how much time you have from
See what we got.
Troubadour Nation. Just a
Yeah.
couple questions. So a couple of these are, I think we've kind of covered them because I'd be curious how you would even answer this question.
Hmm.
But it sounds like it comes out of frustration. This first question. So the first question is, why do kids never listen?
What's wild is I did, so I have a parenting course called Montessori Discipline,
Yeah,
and the subtitle is "Get Your Child to Listen by Choice."
there you go. Yeah.
So I think the answer is you want them to listen, and you're trying to get them to listen. And if you had a boss, if you had a wife, if you had a husband, if you had any other person that's telling you, "Listen to me," why won't you listen to me?
Yeah,
Guess
exactly.
what? Guess what? The last
Yeah.
thing they're going to do.
Listen to you.
listen to
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So anyways, the course is, and the course actually is free in this Montessori club. I was like, I don't want to be charging. It's like $300 course, and so many people couldn't get it. It basically goes through, okay, how do you help your child to want to do the things that you think are important? And then along that journey, you might find that maybe they shouldn't be listening to you.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a good reason they're not listening to you in this moment. So, anyways,
Yeah. No, so I think so. The answer is get this course, basically. Or no,
well,
but
I know that I feel like weird because it's like, oh,
yeah,
the answers are go to my site or something like that.
yeah.
But there isn't one answer. But again, what I think by my subtitle saying, get your child to listen by choice.
Well,
The
give us
point
an
is,
example though of like what's one thing like my kid isn't listening to me about, eating
okay,
the
I'll give you
broccoli.
perfect. Yeah,
What's
I'll
a
give you a perfect example.
concrete
One thing,
example?
put away these toys so that we can go have dinner.
Okay,
You
yeah.
know, like that. Okay, so there's arguing going on. How about you go in there and you go, hey, we're gonna about to have dinner. We gotta put these toys away, and he keeps playing with the toys. Why don't you say, like, if your goal is for him or her, I'm just gonna say him, to put away the toys, why don't you go, hey, look at, well, you got a lot of toys out. Let me crawl down with you, and I'll start putting some toys away with you. And you start putting some toys away. And then let's say some parents are gonna go, well, I've done that, or that doesn't work. Then go, oh man, you'd love to keep playing with the toys, huh? Acknowledge the emotion that, dude, I want to keep playing here. Like, this kid wants to keep, he doesn't care what you got out there food wise. I want to keep playing. You have to acknowledge, let him experience it in his mind that, oh, you you know what I'm feeling. Yeah, I want to keep playing. And you just acknowledge those emotions. That goes a long way. So, man, you'd really love to keep playing, but we can't because we gotta go out there and eat. I'll help you clean up some stuff. Just try that, because most parents get so worked up that the kid is not putting the stuff away that it becomes a battle, and they never actually acknowledge that if this child had his way, his choice, he would actually stay in there for another hour possibly. So you're trying to get him to do something he doesn't want to do. So the first step is to acknowledge that he really, really wants to do it, and that's okay. You know?
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
one
I think
practical
that's a
thing.
great example. And I think the second question is the same thing, but why do you have to repeat yourself 100 times to your kids? And that's the same kind
And,
of thing, I think.
and again, if I bring this, I like bringing it to an adult. So if somebody's talking at me, because I'm going to say talking at me, and they're repeating the same thing, you're yelling at me, or you're repeating something, you're nagging. Nobody likes a nag. So if you're repeating things, that relationship is going to be conflicting. And I got to tell you, most of the time we are repeating things. These children are bright, man. If you said it one time to them and you really looked them in the eyes and you said it with, like a care, they got it. So they got it the first time. So what I think of is, how can we get children to do things that are good and that we think are right without so without so many words?
Well, so as a non-parent, can I put it this way? Like, I'm just out of curiosity if this makes sense. Is like, when if you're trying to like get an action out of like you put it in adult terms, like I want someone who works for me or with me or something to do something. Often, like just saying it isn't enough. You have to help guide them through the action sometimes, depending on what the action is, right? Like if
Yeah.
does that make sense? Is that part of it? Because like words, like if you tell like someone to do something like in the future, for instance, they're gonna forget. Like this happens to me all the time. Like someone tells me my boss tells me to do something, and it's like I forgot. Like, oh man. And so it's really about building the right
Yeah.
kind of system to make that happen. And of course a kid has gonna have a different and more basic system that they're going to be operating
Yeah.
versus I
So
have
there's,
like AI, schedulers and things like that I'm working with.
yeah, the adult analogy definitely breaks down at times, particularly in jobs, because I used to say this to, we're not raising children, our teachers. The teachers were hired to teach. So if we have to like develop up you have to just be careful about the analogy. But I agree that there's guidance. But when a parent says to me that, why am I repeating myself? If you were to say, hey, I got a chocolate bar in the kitchen, you can go ahead and eat it. How
You're
many
not
times do you have to
repeating
say that?
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you're
not
not
repeating yourself,
repeating
because
yourself.
you
Yeah,
see, so usually it's something that they don't want to do. Again, and
yeah.
then you have to figure out, okay, my child doesn't
Okay.
want to do this. And one quick thing is that, let's say a child's doing something you really don't like. Don't go over there and go, I told you not to do this. Go do something else. Just go grab the hand and go, oh, I got something really cool to show you.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, like, they're not doing the thing that you didn't want them to do. It's a good transition. It's a positive transition. You're having more positive interactions with your child or your student, and that maybe as a teacher. You're not having battles and nagging. There's so much that goes into it, but again, like, fewer words, more positivity, trying to focus in on a positive element. Those are a couple things that can work. But there's a lot to go in. There's not just like a quick, hey, here's the solution to that.
Okay, how to help encourage the right friends in their life as they grow.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, I
So
remember this one.
yeah,
Like,
go for it.
I'll just tell you a story. Like, I
Yeah.
had some bad friends for sure. Like, friends whose, uncles were in jail, their mother was doing
Thanks.
bad things, and I was friends with
Mm.
these kids. And my dad at one point like forbid me from seeing one of these kids in particular.
Yeah.
And this was at like 7 or 8, so it was a little bit older than 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe even 9, 10, 11 year old. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, but guess what? Guess what I did?
Yeah. You
I
want to see him more.
no, I still saw him. I snuck out and went
Yeah.
and hung out with my
That's
friend.
what I'm
Right?
saying. You want to see
Yeah,
him
yeah,
more. So you
yeah.
acted
So I
on
was
it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, how do you? But I think it was good. My dad's instincts were probably correct,
Yep.
but yeah, I think that's a good question. How do you encourage the right friends?
So this is a challenging question because, first of all, it's going to be very context dependent on the age of the child.
Yeah.
It's going to be, the relationship beforehand, because my view is, if you had a healthy relationship beforehand, this would be a much easier situation to deal with, and your child probably would not be getting into it.
Mhm.
Um, but say they do get into it, if you are trying to forbid an older child from doing something, forbidding them to do it like that it almost surely will not work. It will backfire. So I think it's hard. I don't know what age the person asked at. Um,
Actually, like
be-
6 year old.
a 6-year-old.
I think a 6 year old. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I think
So
the question is as they grow, like encouraging them to find better friends or find good friends as they get older and older and get into more social situations with older
yeah,
kids.
the number one thing I think to do is to model yourself with good friendships based on meaningful things. So if your friends are, when they come over, all you guys are doing is drinking together and getting drunk, that's going to be a problem because you're modeling bad behavior, and that's not positive. If all you're doing is watching a football game and screaming at the television about a football game, that's not going to encourage good relationships based on like real values. So if you have different friends that are doing different things, like, oh, you go out and you go to the beach with one friend and enjoy the beach together, or one person's a pilot and you go out in his plane, or you go to the mall together and you enjoy chatting with each other and not negativity all the time. So you've got to model good relationships across the board. I think that's the number one thing. And then the second thing I think is what we've been talking about with ourselves, being observant and looking within. When a child reaches a certain age, if they come home and they're upset about something, you can just start asking questions. Oh, what made you upset? Or tell me more about that. So the more a child is observant of the world and thinking about his own feelings and emotions, I think the less they're going to get caught up with bad relationships where they're really after something that's not healthy. We don't we
Yes.
don't
And
we
you don't
don't
know what that
hang
thing
out.
is sometimes.
Yeah, and
Like,
you
you're
know
not
what?
even aware. Yeah. Yeah.
At a young age, you as the child sometimes can't be aware, and then you as an adult, you're not a therapist, you're not a psychologist, maybe you're not even aware. But the more that and this is the point of, the more that we focus on life affirming, life exciting things, like, oh, you hang out with a scientist friend who's super into trees or something like that. It's life focused versus trying to show how cool I am to somebody else, or trying to be in it, or I need to escape the world and do drugs. Like, it's a departure from the world. So the more that we're in the world, the more that we're enjoying the world, the more that we're having healthy friendships as adults, I think the less we'll have this issue.
Yeah. It reminds me of autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, where he talks about his parents and parenting,
Mm-hmm.
where they would, and he tried to model this, where they would bring the most prominent people in the town over for dinner as much as they could to have conversations on important topics and important things. And he, as a young kid, sat at the table and listened, right?
Yeah.
And that was part of it. And so he, he always remembered that type of idea. And I think we as adults can try to have more of that in our lives, of trying to be surrounded by people who the only thing, like if the only thing you talk about are sports around the table, well, you shouldn't be surprised when that's all your kid is capable of talking about,
Yep.
sports, when they get older,
Yep.
right?
And
And there's nothing wrong with sports. Sports is great, but
oh
you
yeah.
should be
And
able
I
to talk
love,
about other things. Yeah, I love sports, but
yeah.
just a variety of topics, and expand your ability to converse with a multitude. That's one example. And
Yeah.
and then also the
No,
science.
and
I agree with
but I
everything.
think that's a great example. I'm happy you raised that, Kirk, because even in the political realm, so what's happening today is people are getting into their bubbles, and then you sit around the table with friends that only share the exact same ideas, and there's no honest, open dialogue or conflict. So a child is not observing people disagreeing with each other. And
Yeah.
that is really problematic because they don't get to absorb that. I'm sure Benjamin Franklin, if his dad is having these different people on, they're having some rowdy discussions.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
And that's important.
civilized, it's respectful, but you're disagreeing. So I think children really need to be exposed to, even if you have people that have a basic fundamental agreement, that you're seeing differences in opinion. And I don't think that's happening quite enough. I mean, how many families are even having meals regularly with other people invited over and allowing the children to sit at the table? I don't know.
Not a lot. Okay. Wait, two more. Let's see how
Two
much.
more. All right, let's see what we
Yeah.
got.
I always get some modest resistance to our kids doing homework. This is the homework
Mhm.
question. How can a parent of young kids aged 5 or 6 get them self-motivated to do
Yeah.
well academically?
Okay. So
I don't know why I
this is
said it like that.
yeah, academic. Yeah. So I mean,
Academic.
this is I think I just happen to be wearing a Montessori education shirt on. Your child at 5 or 6 should not be getting homework. So I would say I would be skeptical of the school that's saying your child at 5 or 6 needs to go home and do homework. Now, the excitement of children at that age, 4, 5, 6, to actually learn about the world is through the roof.
Yeah,
So if there's anything
for
that
sure.
they're pushing back that they don't want to learn this, then something's wrong in the approach and the education, not in your child.
Mhm.
So I would almost assuredly look to a deeper cause in the schooling. Or if you're being a homeschool parent, you just have to be real with yourself and go, because this happened to me. I was a teacher, the child doesn't want to learn this. Why am I trying to force something down their head? That's not the way people learn.
Yeah,
So I think that I don't want to get into a big, long thing of this, but just to
yeah.
look into the education at that point, if it's going well or maybe not so well.
Okay, last one, real quick. Is it better to have your kid be the youngest in the class to learn from his peers, or is it better for him to be the oldest in the class to take more of a leadership role?
Look at, did you set this question up? Because this is like a
Yeah,
perfect Montessori question. I love this.
exactly.
It's
This is
it's
from a
both.
Montessori person. Yeah,
Oh, it's
yeah,
wonderfully both, because when you're the youngest, you have all these people to look up to. Right? Montessori talks about the littles looking up to these older children, so they want to be like them. So you might have a 3-year-old that wants to do like complex 6-year-old math because they've seen the 6-year-old doing it. So it's no matter how good we are as adults, as parents, as teachers, we are so bad in comparison to an older child that helps a younger child. Like we're just so bad
yeah.
because they just connect. So you want your child to be the younger one. And then you also want your child, let's say in that 3 to 6 class, to be the 5 or 6-year-old so they can get to practice teaching what they know to the younger children. Because in most classrooms, you never get experience really. Do I really know what I know? Because I have to try to explain it to somebody else. And I got to help this other child to learn how to, not spill all of his water when he's trying to bring his cup over. So I'm going to aid him. You don't get that experience. So I would say ideally you would have both. And I think ideally in the real world, you want both of those. If you miss one or the other, which traditional school, you miss it for 12 years of your life.
Mhm.
You are not the youngest or the oldest. Maybe I'm 3 months younger than all the other students. That's not enough.
Yeah, couple
You
years.
need both. You need both of those skills. You need to be the one who's like, man, I really want to be like that guy. I'm gonna like at your job, maybe there's somebody you're really working to, like, that guy's so good, I want to learn from him, or that girl. And you also want to be having a lot of practice. Do I really know what I'm doing? Because I got to explain this to a whole world out there. And I don't even like getting up on the stage. I don't know how to put together a presentation to even show people anything. Like, you need skills. You need both of those. So I would say both. There isn't one does not trump the other one.
Well, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they have plus minus equal as a model where it's like you're supposed to train with someone who's above you in belt, someone who's below you in belt, and someone who is equal to you in belt. I think that's the same kind of idea, though, is like you learn different things from different angles. And I do have to make a plug for Austin Shakespeare. So I've seen this. So Austin Shakespeare, in terms of the kids that you're talking about, and this blew my mind, even though I worked at a school before and I've seen this a little bit, but I just saw like 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids going to a Shakespeare play because it was young Shakespeare. Those kids like 13 to 19. And the kids watching the ones on stage, the children watching the kids on stage, the 13 to 19-year-old kids acting in Shakespeare. The audience, they were enraptured of Shakespeare. It was Shakespeare's language, but it was because it was kids, right? So I was like, I just remember watching this like little girl of like, I brought together this group, and there's like this little girl, and she was maybe 8 or 9, and she sat through the whole performance. And she like watched, and I was like, what the hell? I can't even get adults to do this with Shakespeare. Like, I had a guy who was with me. He's like, snoring. I'm like, and this girl was like, I've seen.
They idolize. It's idolize.
Really, it's a very powerful thing, for sure. Yeah. And then when they were asking questions, the kids on stage, they were asking questions afterwards. The kids on stage loved giving answers and talking.
Oh man, yeah, no, that's it. The young.
I love Austin Shakespeare. Go check them out.
Yeah.
All right.
Once I'm out there, I'll check them out. I'll watch.
Move out here. Well, you got an acre. You're not going to move out here.
Oh, I'm not moving out to Austin. I'll definitely check out a play when I visit one day.
Well, come visit, man. All right. Any last thoughts, and we'll sign off. Any last words of advice?
No, I think I really do think if you can get better and better just observing your child, chilling out, like just giving yourself a moment, like let's say the wife or the husband, if they're with the child, so you can just literally, like, I'm sitting in this chair half an hour, you just observe. You gain so much from not always having to be, I got to be doing things, and then allow yourself to feel the emotion. Like, a lot of people push away feelings that they don't want to feel like that. I don't want this feeling of jealousy. I don't want this feeling of rage. No, feel it fully. And then do the work of understanding, well, why did I feel it? And do I want to be feeling it in the future, and all that? So those two things I think are observation and feeling it fully.
All right. Well, thank you, Jesse. And thank you, everybody, for watching Troubadour or listening to Troubadour Talks. Make sure to reach out to Jesse at MontessoriEducation.com. And you can watch his videos on YouTube, join his Montessori School Club if you're interested, or just get involved with more of the events and things going on in that world. So thank you very much. And I'll see everybody next.
Thanks for having me, Kirk. Adios.